This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I am sitting here with Mike Hendry of Hendry Wines, California. How are you today, sir?
Great.
You're braving the cold winter of Toronto, having left your native California. How are you finding it?
A day of snow is actually kind of nice.
Okay.
I've had rain all winter. So.
Okay. So for those of our viewers who are not familiar with your family winery, would you mind telling us a little bit of history?
Sure. Most of the property that we owned was bought by my grandparents in 1939. It's an interesting property, and its history in Napa. Everything we have was planted by 1880. Some of that land was some of the first vineyard in Napa, and one of the first wineries was near there. But following phylloxera and Prohibition, that all went away. At the time my grandparents bought it, there was only 6 acres of vineyard there. So rebuilding the vineyard, replanting things, and building the winery and the wine company has been a lifetime project of my uncle's, really, more than anything. But I manage the vineyard there. I've been working there since 1985 in one capacity or another, and my uncle and I are the only two from our family who are involved, so we each do a little bit of everything. Right,
okay, so you were actually born into winemaking then?
Yes, yeah.
And what are your earliest memories of wine?
I remember more than anything driving the tractor in the vineyard. I remember from the time I was 10, I was really started doing some of that kind of work, and those are very vivid memories for me. My earliest memories of wine, I grew up in Alberta. In fact, I didn't grow up there, but spent spring breaks down there. And in high school, I'd spend my summers working in the vineyard. And those years when I was 15, 16, 17 were the first times that I really had wine with food a lot, and it really changed my perspective on wine and how it works and what it does.
Were you a wine drinker when you were at college, Mike?
Yes, I was,
really?
But I think like most of us at college, I generally couldn't afford the stuff that was, I think, most interesting. So,
now, where would you say that Hendry, as a winery, sits within the contemporary culture of Napa Valley wine?
I think what we do is becoming increasingly rare. We own all our own vineyard. We do all our own farming. We make all our own wine. We're not buying grapes from other places. And we've been farming there for 70 years, and that's something that's very rare in Napa these days.
And would you say there was an underlying philosophy when it came to winemaking at Hendry?
Yes. We're proud of the fact that everything that we produce comes from our vineyard. We feel that the vineyard is very much the most important part of what we do. We talk about our wines in the context of the vineyard, and where we sit geographically, I think, is a significant factor in our wines and the way they taste. So yeah, from winemaking philosophy point of view, we're very vineyard-centric, very vineyard-focused.
And you are a vineyard manager, so do you spend most of your time in the vineyard?
Yes. I spend more of my time on the road these days, but...
Because you also work as a kind of ambassador for Hendry.
Yes, yeah. But I spend most of my time in the vineyard, yes.
Where are your biggest markets for Hendry? Is it the export market? Is there a big, healthy domestic market? Do you sell a lot actually in California itself?
Yes, to all of those. I mean, I don't think that we in total we produce around 15,000 cases of wine, so we don't sell a lot of wine anywhere. We do sell small amounts of wine in a lot of different places. Some of our biggest markets are the Virginia, Washington, D.C. area. New York's a big market for us. California is a big market. And we do sell wine in other parts of Canada, Alberta, British Columbia. We sell a little wine in Europe. Denmark is a pretty good market. But markets have changed a lot in the last 3 years, and I think they'll continue to change.
Were you saying that markets have changed a lot? Have you ever had did you ever have to change your pricing with regards to the recession that we've been going through? Is that something that you've been forced to do, as many wineries have?
Yes, in several circumstances we have. We've had to produce our wines less expensively.
Right,
We
right.
had, growth plans for certain wines that, weren't realistic in light of the economy for the last few years. So some of what we've produced, we've made it and sold it in a style that's less expensive. Yeah.
So you have your vineyards are planted with 10 different varietals. I know this is like asking a father to choose his favorite child, but when it comes to grapes, which do you get the most joy from actually producing into wine, and which of them do you enjoy in their finished state more?
Well, as I'm sure you know, that for me it's not a short answer question, certainly. And I think your favorite wine, whatever it might be, like your favorite food, if you drank it every day, it wouldn't be your favorite wine anymore. So that varies, and often my favorites in the vineyard have more to do with what's happened in the vineyard and how those blocks have developed, and maybe even less with how they taste. So there are certain blocks that I want to do specific things, and maybe I should explain that in our 114 acres of vineyard, we have it divided into 50 smaller plots or blocks, as we call them, that are for one reason or another a distinct combination of the variables that we think are important. And there are blocks that take years to really develop and eventually produce the kind of grapes we want them to, and when they do, those wines become my favorite wines for a while.
Right, that makes sense.
But I think that 80% of our production is in Chardonnay and Cabernet and Zinfandel, and I think that in that range, Cabernet is clearly, I think, a wine that has the most personality, the most complexity. While complexity is a difficult thing to define properly, but I mean, Cabernet is hard to beat in the right circumstance. I think sometimes that takes an older Cabernet to really be in the right circumstance, but the Cabernet, I enjoy the Pinot Noir. I think the Zinfandels also have their place. I think each of those wines does different things with different foods and serves different functions.
Well, I've definitely been enjoying your wines today. The Pinot Gris I found just a wonder. I felt that would be a wonderful restaurant wine. It has some wonderful texture to it and really nice weight on the palate, and has a finesse that I think has been missing from many of the Napa Valley Pinot Gris that I've tried in the past. Your Primitivo, now that's interesting that you label it as a Primitivo. You also make two other Zinfandels, I believe.
Yes.
How would you distinguish the Primitivo, this particular Primitivo here? There we go. From the two Zinfandel you produce.
Well, calling it Primitivo first is sort of an artificial difference, but it helps distinguish a little more from the Zinfandels that we grow. So it is the same varietal, but that doesn't mean that it tastes the same, even growing side by side. So clonal variation in wine grapes is an important factor, and the difference between the Primitivo and our Zinfandels is most importantly due to clonal variation. Stylistically, well, we make all the same wines more or less the same way, or all the Zinfandels more or less the same way. And Zinfandel, at its core, it has some very ripe fruit to it. I think that's what Zinfandel does. The Primitivo, to me, has a very dark sort of grape fruit to it, and I mean that in the sense of almost, the Concord grape, the grape juice grape. And it also has a layer of what I would call chocolate to it. It has this earthy dimension that I see less in the other Zinfandels. Yeah.
From a marketing standpoint, how does labeling something as Primitivo as opposed to the very well-known Zinfandel play out for you?
Well, the marketing of Primitivo and Zinfandel both have been an interesting topic, and there's been a lot of confusion about Primitivo versus Zinfandel and why. I think a lot of that's artificial and came about as a means of protecting American Zinfandel producers from Italian Primitivo producers. But people are certainly becoming more aware of Primitivo and what it is and how it relates to Zinfandel. I don't actually know what the range within Primitivo is. I only have experience with one clone of Primitivo, and that in the vineyard looks different than the other Zinfandels. But people are certainly becoming more aware of Primitivo, and for those that are really kind of interested in wine and in exploring wine and want to learn about grapes, it's been a popular wine. It's also a wine that, if people taste it, I find they like it a lot.
Your Primitivo certainly does have shows wonderful balance. There's a lovely equilibrium going on in there, and it does have higher alcohol. It's labelled as 15.2, but there's amazing balance and really great acidity as well. And we were speaking earlier about the fact that Zinfandel is capable of producing wines with quite a bit of higher alcohol, but because of the uneven ripening within the bunches, you quite often get some. You have the potential for making a reasonably alcoholic wine, but you also have a number of unripe grapes, which actually add that sort of acidic backbone to the wine.
Yeah,
I think that was really well expressed in this particular example.
I do think that's one of the varietal characteristics of Zinfandel, and within a cluster you have elements of overripe and underripe at the same time, and it's a wine that lends itself to higher alcohol styles because of the way the fruit ripens, but it's also a wine that can balance higher alcohols for that reason.
Well, thank you very much for showing me the wines today and for spending some time with Good Food Revolution. We hope to catch up with you perhaps in California the next time.
I hope so.
Thank you very much, Mike.